Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome to a best of 5 series of top level StarCraft 2. What I've got for you today is a Terran versus Protoss. We're in the top left hand corner of a map called Neon Violet Square. We have none other than GuMiho, the Towel Terran himself, and then his opponent playing with the red Protoss pieces. In the opposite corner of the map, we are looking at none other than Skillous's main Nexus. I heard that this particular best of 5 is amazing, so we're gonna find out together exactly what ended up going down. I heard that especially this game number 1 is absolutely epic, so I don't know. I've mostly, so I don't know what happens, obviously. I'm assuming it is due to GuMiho's strategic decisions. So here's the thing, GuMiho is a bit of a weirdo when it comes to high-level StarCraft. Everybody's like Marines, Marauders, and he does the majority of that in his games as well, but he does mix in a bit of Battlecruiser, a little bit of Terran mech, some Thor drops, and all the rest of it, even against Protoss. This is a super big map. The rush distance is one of the absolute longest in any map that we've ever had. So if GuMiho wants to go for something weird, this would be the time to go ahead and do so. Even though against Protoss, you are a bit limited, and generally speaking, you do want to go for a Marine Marauder Medevac-based unit composition. If anybody can figure out something weird, it would be the GuMigod. Now we'll see. Skillous, of course, one of the absolute highest ranked Protoss players from the European region. Genuinely, in my mind, actually very underrated. I mean, I keep saying this, so maybe at some point I don't have to say it anymore, but I genuinely do believe that Skillous is amongst the very best from Europe. He's been making some very significant steps forward over the last bunch of years. Still a pretty young player as well, and there's no denying that he is currently on a bit of a roll, so we'll have to see how well he does against somebody of GuMiho's caliber, because obviously GuMiho, he's ridiculous, right? He's been playing this game since the very beginning, or at the very least as long as I remember. I recall watching this man play back in Wings of Liberty. He was already playing wild and wacky strats. So we'll have to see. Oh my god, look at that. This is a Terran player who's been bullied one too many times. We don't really frequently see it, but I recall some games from back in the day when Neon Violet Square was first introduced. This map recently made a return, where Protoss players would indeed build gateways over here in the top left-hand corner. I mean, it's one of the nastiest cheeses you can go for. I actually forgot about that strategy altogether. GuMiho apparently has not. He probably played against it recently and decided that it was worth checking with that Reaper for just about a second or so. So far though, nothing really too weird yet for the GuMigod, as he is indeed just gonna go into a bio-based start for now. There is a tech lab coming up. We'll probably see the switcheroo, although the timing here really does indicate that he wants to go for a cyclone. Alrighty. In the meantime, it's going to be a Stargate opener as well for Skillous. Most Protoss players do offer, or they do opt rather to go into that Twilight Council instead. It is going to be a good old Cyclone. Twilight Council is very popular, mostly because of Blink Stalkers. Blink Stalker is amazingly popular and very strong if you control the unit correctly. However, the Stargate build in general is strong too on the larger maps, especially when you're playing a big map like this. It takes a long time for the Terran to get across. You get like an extra 5 to 10 seconds or so. It really does make it much easier to play that more, well, passive approach. He is going to start off with an Oracle. Obviously, one of the issues you run into as a Protoss player is that against Zerg, you can two-shot the workers. Against Terran, the SCVs, they have 45 health. It takes a third shot for the Oracles to be able to snipe them very rapidly, and it's just not as effective a unit across the board, but still very good in the right situation. So let's see. We have a gateway coming up here at the front as well. Warp gate is immediately going to start. Reaper just idling over at the third Nexus location, although sometimes Protoss players will go for the one on the low ground. Sometimes they will go for the one over here in the back. And that may just be the location that Skillous is thinking of. Reaper is heading on over in that direction. That was a sloppy force field, man. How did we just misclick an entire force field like that? A little messy. Alright, not the end of the world. We do, however, have a Marine drop coming in. A bit of an oopsie. Yeah, a small oopsie. Not a very significant oopsie at all. It's a straight fleet beacon. I can't believe I didn't notice it. I just sort of assumed that this was going to be your regular run-of-the-mill tech structure that we get in pretty much every single game. And I'm curious. I'm actually gonna back up here for a second. Did GuMiho ever click on that structure? Because it's super common to have a glowy structure over here in the corner. You can see the selection circle. Did GuMiho ever click on that fleet beacon? Because that could be a gateway. That could be a Twilight Council. That could be a forge. That could even be a He never clicked it. This is a weird spot. So, Skillous assumes that he's been scouted. He doesn't cancel the structure because, you know, what's the point? You may as well just keep it up when it's that close to finishing. He does still decide to go for the Tempest here regardless, but this does make everything a little bit awkward. He believes that GuMiho knows that he's going for a Tempest rush. So he's still going for an awkward Tempest transition, but he's probably anticipating a very quick response as well here from the Terran. This could have been an easy win for GuMiho, or at the very least an easy counter. Well, you probably wouldn't be going, for example, for a Cloak Banshee here. Probably suboptimal, but anyways. There's a little bit of a mind game going on. Do you just double down now? I guess you've already committed. Yeah, I guess you do double down. You just continue. No, he doesn't. This is the most expensive Tempest I've ever seen. Well, it is going to be quite good, I guess, as a janitor unit. Yeah, you can use it to clean up any of those big flying units from the Terran here. That is the world's most expensive janitor. He's got a golden broom and everything. The fleet beacon, for example, is 300 minerals, 200 gas. Very expensive structure to just put down, especially if you're just going to make, well, for now at least one Tempest. The second one is coming. But mostly a transition here towards a Twilight Council and then also a Forge. Well, if you didn't know what he was playing against, GuMiho right now has a really good understanding. Ooh, and he decides to plant down a very quick second factory. I assumed that I was going to have to keep my camera on the Terran player. This is what seems to be a reactionary mech transition. So he has seen that this is a quick Tempest opener from Skillous. Skillous basically skipping the early game as well as the mid game, just going straight towards the late game. Skillous believed that he had been spotted, so he decided to tech back down towards the Blink Stalkers and then also the +1. GuMiho, however, believes that he is now playing against a Protoss player who wants to go straight to late game, and he decides to play mech because of it. There's a mind game within a mind game within a mind... We're going a Thor drop, of course! Doesn't have to be a Thor drop, but I want it to be. Please make two Medevacs and another Thor out of this thing. Yes, dude. We are going Tempest hunting. Huh. This is like the big game hunters equivalent, but then for StarCraft 2, I guess, huh? Little odd. We're literally hunting the biggest game that Protoss has. So obviously Thors do have 2 attack modes. The high impact mode is really good against these particular units, like for example the Tempest. Basically any high HP target that flies. So yeah, it's the perfect opportunity here. So I do want to see those Thors immediately switch their weapons. Here's one. Yeah, he does switch it over. So they have a splash damage mode, which is their default one. And then they also have, oh my god, the Vikings are just gonna kill this. Yeah, we have a good lock on there as well from the Cyclone. Well, this is awkward. This whole game is so weird. He doesn't need the Thors anymore, but now he's got the Thors. The Tempests are already gone, and Protoss decides to go into Blink instead. Alright, now we're gonna go into the Cyclone transition. So he's got the Blue Flame upgrade, he's got the Cyclone lock-on improvement too. We are gonna go into what seems to be a Hellion Cyclone transition here in the end. And then a starport with a tech lab, I mean, could be Battlecruisers, doesn't have to be. But I would like it. Probably not. Probably not the case. Here come the Thors. You really don't expect any Thors at this point. Honestly, if GuMiho just spends all of his money on just making a bunch of stuff, this seems to be an extremely strong Terran army. Skillous realizes, though, that he needs to shut this down before it sieges up right outside of his front door. So he blinks in, decides to target down whatever he can. Marines, though, that were awkwardly made because they thought they were going to get upgraded, are now just sort of using their guns with whatever base damage they have. Siege Tank is not going to be able to siege up at this rate, though. Great snipes there by Skillous. Oracle has made its way back home. Honestly, quite useful here. Gotta be careful that it doesn't get gunned down, but this is one of the weirdest interactions I've ever seen in a Terran versus Protoss. Bunch of Blue Flame Hellions come driving in. Oh, careful for the probes. There is an Oracle here that's gonna activate its Pulsar Beam. And as the dust settles, this is totally fine for Skillous, I think. He lost 9 probes. He lost a lot of Stalkers. Yeah, this situation is still certainly better for the Terran player, but I kind of assumed that Skillous was going to be forced to tap out of the match. Not the case. Not the case at all. Okay, so Banshees are going to be the name of the game. We're basically just going full battle mech. So this is not really your passive style of mech with, well, a bunch of Thors first, and I guess we also had a bunch of siege tanks and all that, but this is mostly going to be cyclones and Hellions, and then I guess some Banshees with their speed upgrade too, although he hasn't fired it up yet. It's kind of expensive, but the Banshee speed is pretty much a necessity here in my mind, if you are going to make more Banshees at this stage in the game. And in the meantime, on the other side of the map, Skillous is mostly just trying to make a whole load of gateway units. He does have a robo facility, and he does plan down the gold base too. That's nice and all. But in a straight-up engagement, the Terran army is going to be miles better. Yeah, Immortal production is going to be good. I think additional Immortals, maybe additional Tempest here, not a bad idea. Maybe even the carriers. There's no line of missile turrets around the main base yet, so the Prism is going to be able to go in. Okay. There are a bunch of missile turrets, though, and obviously this lock-on ability is fantastic. The red LEDs have already turned itself on in front of all these cyclones. Cloaked Banshee is coming in from the weirdest angle ever. And it is going to spot a bunch of probes moving in a weird direction because there's no nexus over here on the low ground. So I'm assuming GuMiho has now picked up on the fact that there is a gold base down. Both players end up taking a lot of damage. Detection is now available in the form of that revelation ability from the Oracle. The Banshee decides to slip away. Okay. New command centers coming up. He does decide to make a bunch of siege tanks. I don't hate it. Generally, just sitting on that very mobile army is nice, but this is not really a situation where he's able to be particularly aggressive with it. Normally, Battle Mech is played very actively, and you go all across the map. Maybe now that Protoss is not really moving around with as many Stalkers anymore, he can start being a bit more adventurous. At the very least, these Cyclones over here are going to try and get lucky. Probe scouts it immediately, and well, there's a Widow Mine over here too that now shows the movement speed of the rest of this Protoss ball. We have 4 Archons on the production tab, 1 Immortal, and then a Tempest for Protoss. He's already gone into the +3, which is actually kind of nice. Gateway Explosion coming up as well. Looks like we're going to go up to 12 gateways for now. I've seen Protosses go all the way up to like 20, 25 gateways in these situations. That is a little wild. But honestly, this is a game that does not look like it's going to end anytime soon. GuMiho now has 91 workers. Yeah, he's making loads of command centers too. This is going to be the richest Terran I've seen in some time. +3 coming up as well for the mechanical units. +1 vehicle plating just finished up as well in the alternate armory. He already did build an engineering bay. That was mostly just for missile turrets now, I suppose, and to be able to go for a planetary. Wouldn't be surprised if the original intent was to go into a good old bio army instead and go into the Stimpaks and all that. Well, here we go. Additional fusion core coming up together with a whole load of starports. GuMiho is preparing for what seems to be a Sky Terran transition. In the meantime, we have the +1 air weapons researching as well for Skillous, who's now also going for the Tempest upgrade. This upgrade allows the Tempest to deal double damage to structures. Extremely useful. Raven coming up too as a mobile detector, because I guess Dark Templar are going to be quite useful here too for Protoss. I mean, especially when Terran moves out across the map. He adds on more command centers. Cloaked Banshees here in the meantime. Still no hyperflight rotors on them, which is a bit weird to me. Maybe they can still be useful though and force a cancel. In the meantime, we do have a fight in the middle of the map, but the Terran army is much quicker than that of the Protoss. They're trying to slither away. Those lock-ons are quite good. It's only a handful of Cyclones, but not a bad situation. Looks like the Banshees, by the way, did finish the job. They have now escaped towards the top right-hand corner. A bunch of photon cannons are going to join this base now too, as Skillous is trying to reconstruct it. The mothership is coming up. We have the interference matrix ability research finishing right now for GuMiho. That's going to allow him to temporarily disable the important units here for Protoss. I mean, if you haven't watched the Terran versus Protoss in a little while, this is not what they normally look like. There's a lot of weirdness happening here. Weapon refit researching here. That's the Yamato cannon upgrade for Battlecruisers. Dude, my favorite part about this though is that Skillous is the one that prompted this. Generally, GuMiho plays the weird games, and I'm sure that GuMiho doesn't mind it. But this is Skillous inviting it. Most players don't like to play against GuMiho in this way, because GuMiho is more practiced in these situations than anybody else, really. But Skillous is saying, yo, I can fight you here. I can wrestle with you. Let's see how it goes. And so far, honestly, he's doing really well. This is a difficult one to predict right now for me too, though. I think GuMiho is in a more comfortable position here. But as the game goes on, generally Terran does struggle with mech to take more bases. So this first little quadrant in the top left-hand corner, I mean, not much you can really do about it. But all these outer bases now are going to be further and further apart. But let's see. That is nice, a nice turtled up position here. How many Vikings do we have? Just the one. So really the anti-air here for Terran is going to be in the form of those cyclones. Trying to scan, get the lock on, and drive backwards again. Gets a bunch of units, but loses a cyclone there too. Thors are coming up now. He needs something more sturdy. Okay. If he can snipe, Skillous that is, if he can snipe the cyclones, the Tempest can fly in and kill everything else. I like knocking down these rocks here. It's difficult to break the siege tank line, but not impossible. Cloaking field gets activated, trying to save whatever he can save. The mothership's super useful in this department. 5 Thors coming up. I mean, when's the last time we've seen 5 Thors on the production tab and then already a full Battlecruiser transition imminent? This never happens in a matchup. Cloak Banshees in the meantime, trying to be a nuisance. Not enough energy for another revelation. More missile turrets coming up here as well for the Gumi God. A man of many nicknames. I don't remember what a GuMiho is. Isn't that like a 9-tailed fox or whatever? I'm not exactly sure. Anyways. The Gumi God. The Towel Terran. I still think Towel Terran is my absolute favorite nickname in all of StarCraft 2. He plays with a little towel over his mouse hand. Apparently he's got hyperhidrosis, which means that his hands, for him at least, his hands excessively sweat. Gotta play the little towel game. Oh my god, interference matrix on a mothership. I was wondering what the main target was gonna be. Yeah, I guess that disables Mama for a little bit. No worries though, she's back in action. Looks like the ability is actually going to continue after it wears off. That's curious. The cooldown did already reset, if I'm not mistaken now. A bunch of SCVs are being sacrificed. This is that weird moment where you spend the majority of the early game trying to kill your opponent's economy, and then in the late game they're like, yo bro, here, have a bunch of space construction vehicles. I don't really need them anymore. Storm coming up, +2 air coming up as well. Same on the other side of the map as far, no, not the storm upgrade, but the +2 air. +3 vehicle plating too. The Raven count is growing. We actually already have 7 of them. Honestly, I feel like it comes down to whoever gets to take these outer bases, and that's exactly what Skillous is realizing here too. He decides to take one of the bases that would ordinarily be considered to be the Terrans. So he is gonna go and take the base that is opposite this one that he's already mining. Even if he trades horribly inefficiently, this is going to lure GuMiho out of his turtle, right? Like he's trying to find an engagement. GuMiho is saying, yo, I'm gonna sit behind my structures and all my static defense. Come and fight me if you want, but it's not gonna go well for you. This is Skillous now saying, yo, if you are not gonna move out, I'm gonna take one of your bases, and you're likely not ever going to trade so cost efficiently that you can make up for having an entire base less and me having an entire additional mineral line. There's the additional gateways coming up, by the way, so we are gonna go all the way up to 19 gates. SCVs have been caught in a stasis ward. They are just here to die. It's a little sad. Don't think they're gonna be able to kill the Nexus. So what do you do here as GuMiho? GuMiho, by the way, prepared to make Battlecruisers, but it's an expensive transition. One Battlecruiser doesn't do much, so I think he wants to basically whip out like 5 of them all in one go. It takes a long time though, and it is a bit expensive. 2 Thors have been sent forward, not too much. Okay, Skillous is hoping that maybe the rest of the Terran army then is also distracted as he snipes some of the static defense, and he's going straight through the center here. Nice engagement here for Skillous. He needs to be very cautious though. Cloaking field gets activated again on the Mama ship. Storms are super powerful in this situation too. This is only part of the Protoss army as it is currently split up. Dark Shrine on the back of this. More and more of these cyclones are coming up. I mean, cyclones, I guess, are going to be good against Tempest as well as the mothership, but the Immortals are going to absolutely tear them apart. We have a recall on this army, and they're going to join up with the rest of the troops. Looks like the Thors in this area of the map have been pushed away. I would love to see Skillet transfer some probes from one of his easier to mine bases towards the one that he just took from his opponent. This planetary fortress is going to go down, and Skillet is playing this out wonderfully. Yeah. I'm honestly wondering if you can even play this as GuMiho. Is this even really viable? He's now also remaxing with a stupid amount of Stalkers. Very quickly able to replenish any of the lost supply. GuMiho still has money in the bank, but not nearly as much as Skillous. Dark Shrine finishing. We have more and more Cyclones coming up. I feel like the Cyclone in theory is good, but they're very high damage and relatively low survivability, right? So, one bad engagement. Tempest have a lot of range. One storm. The Immortals, if they can catch up with them, they're gonna tear them apart. Here go the Ravens, though, and the interference matrices are gonna be absolutely critical. I guess that's one way to deal with the Protoss army. Just disable all the units. There's barely anything fighting right now as the Cyclones close in. They lock on everything, and they blast all the units out of the skies. What an engagement from GuMiho. Wow, that was one of the coolest things I have seen in a long time. That was so... Okay, so GuMiho is now suddenly at a 60 supply lead. Keep in mind, though, that Skillous has been out-mining the Terran for quite a long time. GuMiho has been giving up on his SCVs, only to replace them with more army supply. Stalkers are desperately warped in, awkwardly trying to make their way through all of these squares back home. GuMiho has decided that he wants to jump the soft underbelly of the Protoss player. He wants to try and get on top of all of these expensive production structures so he can snipe the units as they pop them out of those, well, for example, Robos and Stargates and all the rest of it. Skillous, though, like I said, has 100 gateways. He decides to warp in, cut off the retreat path, and the supply count has been evened up. This is apparently the time that GuMiho decides to make that transition. It's gonna take a while to build them, but Battlecruisers are coming up. I think Skillous is still okay. Yeah, that looked really dangerous there for just a moment. That was very sketchy, but GuMiho could not get into the main base. Now the Stalkers are gonna try and warp in. They'll try and see if they can just snipe whatever they can here. A couple siege tanks go down. Bunch of Cyclones get sniped. Battlecruiser's about to spawn, and as much as I like Battlecruisers here, I don't know if it's gonna be that useful. What exactly are the Battlecruisers going to achieve? We have a group of Dark Templar. They're not gonna get recalled. Where do we use the BCs? Aren't the Stalkers just going to beat them straight up? This is one of those awkward moments where you have, like, technically the best and highest tier unit, but I'm not sure how useful it really is going to be. Stalkers still blinking wherever they can. Time warp coming up because the stepmother ship is now here. Oh, he's trying to lock on. For now, though, she's okay. Not enough Protoss army on the ground, though, to clean any of this up, so the mothership itself is going to have to start putting in the work. Those lasers, by the way, of the mothership really hurt these days. It used to just sort of be like a nice little graphic, right? It shot lasers and it looked kind of badass. These days, it's not uncommon to see a mothership with like 20 plus kills. Dark Templar have found another base on the far left side of the map. This CC actually apparently burned all the way down. Where's those Battlecruisers? Okay, they have apparently jumped towards the other side of the map, and they're now waiting for their tactical jump ability to once more come off cooldown. There's 5 of them. I guess the plan is to just go into the main base and kill as much as possible? Keep in mind that Skillous can win the straight-up engagement, but there's a very good chance that the Battlecruisers are going to try and avoid that to the best of their abilities. GuMiho needs to do something with them fast, though, because these Stalkers are just tearing him apart. Planetary Fortress is going to be next to fall as the Dark Templar blink in, snipe the structure. Another CC gets lifted off. This is apparently when the Battlecruisers commit and they just sort of awkwardly do a flyby. I don't know. Seems kind of pointless. It looks cool. I love to watch the cinematics, I suppose, but it doesn't seem to be particularly great. Awkward moment, I guess, for Skillous is that he doesn't have enough money here to warp in enough Stalkers for now. He's got plenty on the other side of the map, so he could always recall if he wants to. In the meantime, though, he has torn apart another couple command centers. GuMiho had a few left over to replace them with. Dark Shrine gets killed. Cybercore, actually, gets remade. And this could be a bit sketchy, because Skillous doesn't currently have a Cybercore. And without a Cybernetics core, he cannot warp in Stalkers. Not usually a problem you run into. I mean, I think he has enough Stalkers to keep this at bay anyway, but... yeah, it is something that maybe GuMiho could exploit. It's kind of like killing a Zerg's, I don't know, like a spawning pool in the late game. Not generally very useful, but sometimes it might just break the game for the Zerg. I think Skillous is fine, though. This expansion got denied. There's one cheeky fire bug over here. Look at him, just hanging out. Little paint job on the side, looking extra badass, but ultimately it does fall to the ground. Big Stalker warp in. Gumi is like, yo, didn't I just kill all of your gateways, or at least like disabled a bunch of them? How did you just warp in an additional like 12 Stalkers? Well, it turns out there's more gateways. Yeah, there's a whole load of them sprinkled all over the Protoss' bases. We have a little bit of everything everywhere. Okay. Okay. And as the dust settles, nice teleportation there, but as the dust settles, this spot is much better for Skillous. Yeah. GuMiho's expansions are still here. He's replaced the command centers with new orbitals, but the mineral fields are looking mighty skinny. And in the meantime, Skillous still has a good chunk of mining going on himself. This base could certainly use a bunch of additional probes. This one over here is back up and running. He's now going to take another expansion in the far top right. And I don't really believe there is much that GuMiho can do about this. I mean, he's got a banger army. I think that's probably his best choice. Try to make the absolute strongest ball you can make right now as Terran and just go. He hasn't actually replaced any SCVs in a long time, but that is so many Stalkers. I don't think I actually can get them on one screen unless I zoom out. Command center goes down. More SCVs are falling too. GuMiho not replacing them, hoping that maybe one day he can remax on just an awful lot of troops. Yeah. And this is where the Terran mech army doesn't look nearly as menacing anymore. Now it kind of looks like an old school force that you just played with back when you were a child, you know? Like, it's just a bunch of toy cars that GuMiho had, and he's using them, but not much to be done. Well, he still has 123 army, and that is, yeah, that is, maybe in like, if Skillous goes AFK and he takes the worst fight of his life, this is still a winnable situation for GuMiho, but Skillous has the more expensive army, he's got the better economy, he's got similar upgrades. Yeah, this is one of those weird moments where the Battlecruisers are kind of pointless. Okay, well, GuMiho is not going to go down without a fight. It'll have to come down to this engagement that's coming up next. He wants to shut down this base. Problem here for GuMiho is that his army is not as good, and there's a ton of static defense too. Yes, shield batteries are not quite as powerful as they once used to be, but they're still really useful. Skillous decides to go around the site. I find this unnecessarily risky. Yeah, he's thinking, yo, maybe I can just go into your main base. My army's faster moving than yours. GuMiho awkwardly trying to trail back. Yeah, and in the meantime, the economy is just so much better for Skillous. Look at the amount of money he's gathering. About 2,500-ish resources a minute more than his opponent. GuMiho can't even max out. Here's the BCs. This is the big jump. It doesn't look very impressive, but this is the big engagement. We do get some Yamato cannons. One of the Tempest gets, well, knocked out of the sky. Stalkers go back around again. Skillous doesn't want to take the main engagement, right? So he obviously doesn't know exactly how much the opponent has. We have perfect vision, and we're like, yo, maybe you should just fight that Terran army straight up. Skillous doesn't know. This has been an extremely chaotic game, a very difficult one to read. So he decides to play this in what is in his mind the safest way possible. Yeah, it does mean that the siege tanks are going to be able to tear apart all of those nice static defensive structures though, and the Nexus is also going to go down. Battlecruiser is in the main base, in a bit of trouble. Yeah, once Skillous gets to warping in units again, he's going to remax. very rapidly. Here's another group of stalkers. Still 9,000 resources in the bank. He makes probes? I think Skillous is misreading this game a bit. He really doesn't need any of this. But he wants to be safe. He wants to be careful. Yeah. GG gets cold. GuMiho decides to rip off the band-aid himself. Brilliant game of StarCraft 2. Yeah, I'm just gonna come out and say that that was the best game of 2025. So far. As you probably know, I get a Game of the Year once every 3 to 4 weeks or so. That's how that works. Some might argue that I should call it a Game of the Month. But where's the clickbait in that? No. Game of the Month? I don't like it. Game of the Week? Boring. Game of the Year. Yeah. For what it's worth, I believe I've only put one Game of the Year video in a YouTube playlist so far this year. And I mean, we're already a month in. So, yeah. Game of the Decade. Best game of the millennium. An eternity of perfect games. No, maybe the clickbait goes a bit far. I actually have a playlist on my YouTube channel titled Game of the Year. If you ever want to have a catch-up on all of the best games that have been played over the, well, however long that playlist has been going on, I think a couple years at this point, you should go ahead and have a look. There are some absolute bangers in there. I mean, I used the title a bit, you know, a bit as a joke, because obviously, believe it or not, you don't get multiple games. No, you do get multiple games in a year, but that is essentially the very best games of StarCraft that I have come across. And I cast StarCraft pretty much every single day. Anyhow, what are we gonna go for this time around, Gumi? I can't believe it was Skillous, though, playing the weird strat in the first game of the series. And then he believed he was spotted, but GuMiho actually he never clicked on it. He didn't know that it was a Tempest rush. So that was one of the most, interesting situations I've seen in a game for a while now. Anyways, it's going to be a more conventional start this time around, as he's going into the Twilight Council. Where did the probe recall from? I guess the other side of the map. Wanted to keep it alive. Blink should be the weapon of choice right here for Skillous. In the meantime, we do have a reactor coming up too. We'll probably see a starport here. And then there's a bit of variety as to what GuMiho wants to go for. He can go into Cloak Banshees. He can go into a, I don't know, like a Widowmine drop. He can go into a Hellion drop. He can go into whatever. GuMiho doesn't really seem to have a go-to. Not necessarily a preference, I don't think. He plays a little bit of everything. This is looking like a much more conventional style, though, for Skillous. So once upon a time, this wasn't really the go-to standard. It's mostly, in my mind, Max Specs that has really popularized it on the European server. For a little while there, it kind of looked like Blink Stalker openers weren't that good. And then Max Specs was like, yo, guys, you actually just need to, like, just micro. Like, if you just micro better, it turns out the unit is better, too. Once upon a time in StarCraft, there was this Alpha Star project from Google. They basically trained an AI to play perfect StarCraft, and when it had infinite actions per minute, it figured out very quickly that the Stalker was the absolute best unit in the game. Because you can do perfect target firing, and obviously, imagine you have 17 eyes and infinite actions per minute. You could keep track of everything that's going on, and yeah, just process all the info and never really lose a single Stalker. There were some absolutely brilliant games, played by Alpha Star at the time. Well, pro gamers are still trying to mimic it. We haven't gotten particularly close to perfect Stalker micro, but we're getting closer every year. Yeah, some beautiful moments too with Zerg micro and Terran control as well. But I will always remember the Blink Stalker. You know what else I will remember? Whenever we talk about Alpha Star, this has to be brought up. Once upon a time, the Google DeepMind team was stream sniping people. So I was playing StarCraft 2 on my channel, and I got stream sniped by the Google offices. Now, I don't want to flex, but I beat Alpha Star. Later that day, somebody else got stream sniped, and his name is Cyril. Guess who lost? It just needs to be pointed out. Anyways, Hellions or the probes rather, in a little bit of trouble against the Hellion. 5 of them go down so far. Stalkers in the meantime, though, on the other side of the map. It was a different version of Alpha Star. Apparently, he was playing against the much higher levels of it, but it doesn't matter. Okay, this is my proudest achievement. Actually, I don't remember if Zero got stream sniped by them or if it was like at an event or something. Anyways, doesn't matter. Completely irrelevant. I'm better than Cyril. There it is. Definitely. Totally. Much better. Yeah, I probably played against like the Gold League version of Alpha Star. He played against the, you know, infinite actions per minute Alpha Star instead. Stimpack is finishing up. Trying his very best. I actually got to meet one of the developers, or actually, it was like 3 guys that used to work at Google at a tournament a little bit later on. And they mentioned that Alpha Star would never GG out. Because technically speaking, obviously the AI has played a game where somebody disconnected. So there is always a win condition. So apparently they had to manually GG out, because Alpha Star would never leave. I find the whole project pretty funny. Sadly not going on anymore these days, but that was really fun. +1 coming up here for the Terran player as he is finishing up the combat shields research too. Prism is gonna get sniped, so that's a really good beginning here for Gumi. It's gonna make it difficult for Skillous to achieve much more, and this game is looking a lot more conventional. Yeah, all of this is a lot more conventional now. Skillous has killed 10 probes with his aggression, and that is making this game super tough for Skillous. Or what? GuMiho has killed 10 probes. Did I just say that Skillous killed 10 probes? Anyways, long story short, Skillous is in a bit of a tough position. GuMiho just about to get a nice power spike as well with his army. Combat shields finishing up. The Marines suddenly find a shield in their back pockets. Where did they keep it all this time? I don't know. But they got an additional 10 HP in exchange for it too, which is nice. Stalker is going to see this army marching in. The siege tanks are joining up too. This is going to be a tough hold here for Skillous. He decides to see if he can slow down this army. Good force fields. Woo! Okay, that makes up for the force field in the beginning of the previous match. That one was a bit sloppy. Prism number 2, ready to fly in. And it looks like GuMiho actually retreats. Charge is super good in those engagements, and he decides to just play it as safely as he can. Now that makes this game a lot more manageable though for Skillous. He's got a 3rd Nexus already up and running. 3rd Command Center just about to finish up here for the Gumi God. Zealot's just trying to deal as much damage as possible. Hard to really keep track of how much they really do. The rest of the Protoss army though has decided to be a bit adventurous. I don't think they can really break the natural, but maybe they can keep the Terran player occupied for a little while, well. GuMiho is gonna try and see if he can just expand very straightforwardly. Skillous actually just barely did not see all of that, although he may have noticed the Terran army and then also the SCV transfer using the observer of his. Zealots coming in, going after the SCVs. Siege tank actually trying to shoot at those Zealots too, but then in the meantime dealing a ton of damage to his own friendlies. This is an incredible engagement here for Skillous. Exactly what he needed. Killed the siege tank too, just to rub salt in? Nah, apparently we're not gonna get it. Suddenly, Skillous is finding himself at 62 workers versus only 48. Income advantage is once more gonna go in his favor. He knows there's mules there's gonna be mules right now, but it's a bit too much. Getting a little bit greedy. There's one siege tank somewhere here, man. That guy. This guy right over here. 1 confirmed kill. And probably about... He killed 1 Zealot and then probably about 8 SCVs. Good job, buddy. Good job, man. Hope you're proud of yourself. 2nd Robo coming up. Well, maybe that single siege tank, though. There's 2 of them in total, but that siege tank over here, maybe it can still help out. The Terran army is still looking huge. A bunch of probes awkwardly transfer through that army. As Skillous is trying to set up a 4th Nexus. Zealot's trying to come in from the back. Those Widow Mines in a much better spot. And this is a clumsy engagement here. for the Protoss player. He does have a Zealot run by, but reinforcing Terran units are going to be able to easily shut that down. 19 probes fall just like that. Well, quite a few SCVs are also going to have to pay the price. This Nexus, though, is in a world of trouble. There is a Colossus now. It doesn't yet have the ranged upgrade. Another Nexus falls. Obviously, he knows, GuMiho that is, where those probes were headed onto, and, well, they were rallied through that bio army. He's going to get the Nexus too. Suddenly, Skillous is once more in a really sketchy position. Yeah. He almost came back here, but I'm not liking this position anymore for Protoss. He's been knocked down to 2 base economy versus a 3 base Terran. His most expensive units are getting sniped. GG gets called, and GuMiho evens up the score. King's Cove is going to be our next game in this best of 5 series. Another big one. The last big map, we had a Stargate opener into a very quick fleet beacon, into Terran going into full mech, into Battlecruisers, into Ravens, and the whole shebang. Well, we do begin once more with a Stargate. We start with a Stargate. Stargate, that's it. I mean, again, this is a map where you can play Terran mech. I don't think it's very good, but you can. I would like it. Tech lab coming up. Starport would not be all too strange at this point in time here as well for GuMiho. Adept is going to check the high ground now. Should be an Oracle. Could be Phoenixes. I always like Phoenix builds. Ah, hey, nice. We are gonna go for Phoenixes. Phoenixes is one of those strategies that just takes like... It's like playing Mutalisks as Zerg, you know? It just takes an entirely different skill set to be able to make the unit work properly. The only problem is that Phoenixes is that they're very delicate. They have quite a bit of HP, but you really aren't allowed to lose any in the earlier stages of the game. Their strength in numbers, especially for the Phoenix. One Phoenix doesn't do anything. There's also definitely an upper limit. Oh, GuMiho's accidentally gonna see it. That's really nice. It allows him to, for example, make a second cyclone here. Super handy. Going to be a double barracks opener instead of a quick starport, so he'll be forced to play it a little bit more passively, which should work out for Skillous all right. There's a few different ways that usually you follow up Phoenixes, so either you go into the charge lots. That seems to be quite popular right now, actually. Historically, not the most popular choice. Most of the time, Protoss players would always go Phoenixes into Colossi. The Phoenixes basically buy you enough time to go straight into the Robo facility, the Robo Bay, get the ranged upgrade to get the Colossi going. Looks like maybe we are going to see that here as well from Skillous, but some of the top-level Protoss players, like, for example, Hero lately, whenever he goes for any sort of Phoenix start, I pretty much always see him go Twilight Council on the back of it. So it is still a bit of a guessing game for GuMiho, but he has seen the Robo facility, so I guess that gives him all the information that he needs. The Hellions not really killing anything, but still a lot of valuable scouting. You wouldn't go for such a quick Robo facility if you go for the Twilight Council follow upgrade. So it's gonna be the Robo Bay on the back of this right now, and we should see the Colossi hit the battlefield within about a minute. Now, is there much that GuMiho can really do about it? No, I don't think so. Problem is, against Phoenixes, if you leave right now with all your units, they're gonna kill your SCVs, pick up any reinforcements, and then still be home in time for the base defense. Right? Like, obviously they have a limited amount of energy and they can't continuously lift. But they're super fast. And since they're flying units, they can essentially control all of the terrain pretty easily. They don't have to worry about any of the cliffs or anything like that. GuMiho's army not nearly as fast, and on a map like this, I don't think he can really do much about this. So he's decided to go for the quick triple command center. He's just going to try and play a macro game from here, which means that indeed the Colossus transition is going to be something that Skillous can get away with. Let's see. Twilight Council. Forge coming up as well. Just a nice macro follow-up. I like these builds because they effectively force Terran to play a longer game. If you go up against a lot of Terrans that do aggressive builds, and it's the type of stuff you struggle against quite a bit, this is something that is very much so in your control as a Protoss player. On the larger maps in particular, if you play Phoenixes into Colossi, for example, really well, you can generally always force a macro game. Now, you still will have to play a macro game, which is not easy. But at least the Terran player needs to be kept honest. If they make a mistake, you can swoop in, kill their economy. Still be home in time for dinner. Jimmy is going to go on a little bit of a march across the map. Try to see if there's already a 4th Nexus up. Jimmy is cheaper than a scan. Also, Jimmy is dead. Yeah. Yeah, there he is. Yeah, you could send like 8 Jimmys and still be okay. Still be cheaper than a scan. Don't tell Jimmy that, though. Oh, that is unfortunate. GuMiho is making sure that his base is fully defended. Building 2 supply depots in this region as well. Obviously, he can lower the depots and still leave himself, but gonna be a bit annoying against any zealots that might go in, especially if you burrow a couple of widow mines or whatever behind it. You can stay alive, but it means that GuMiho is embracing the macro game. Templar Archives on the back of this too, so Skill is looking for his 2nd form of splash damage. The first one, of course, being those Colossi. A 3rd one is already ready to pop, and that's generally speaking how many you're gonna get. You could go into a 4th. Could even go into a 5th. 3 is usually good. And that means we're also gonna see the Terran player now transition for the very first time in the series to the Ghost Academy. It is interesting. This is like the internet's most hated StarCraft unit. At least it was, like a half year ago. Even though in the vast majority of the games, it doesn't even ever hit the battlefield. Like, for some reason, the StarCraft subreddit and the Battle.net forums and everything, everybody was out on the Ghost. And ultimately, we settled on making the Ghost 1 supply more expensive. And everybody's like, ha! We got him, boys! The Ghost is not as good anymore. And it really isn't. But also, it's still good. And also, in the majority of the games, you don't even see it. Anyhow. Yeah, not much you can do here as GuMiho, though. Zealots go in as soon as he leaves. Zealots are almost like the Phoenixes 2.0. They're very annoying. Obviously, one of the issues you run into here as a Terran player is you can't just make a bunch of Vikings. Generally, if it's a Colossus opener, you would go into Vikings and just sort of gun them out of the sky. It's great and all, but that's exactly where those Phoenixes are still useful as well. They can soak up a lot of damage and even contest with the Vikings. This is a banger of an engagement right here for Skillous, although he needs to be careful. An additional group of Zealots do show up. Phoenixes just trying to snipe whatever they can. One of the Vikings goes down. Another siege tank gets lifted off. Most of those Colossi have no support anymore in front of them, but it looks like they don't really need it. What a fight there for Skillous. Most Protoss players are very scared taking those engagements. If you lose the Colossi, you effectively lose the game. But Skillous looked at it once and he realized what the best play was. So he stood his ground. A fantastic play here by Skillous. You love to see it. It's a lot of Zealots though. Blink is going to be his next weapon of choice, but Skillous is smelling blood in the water right now. Yeah, he's engaging over here because it allows him to split off a bunch of his Zealots to go after the SCVs. Colossi are actually just straight up winning the fight, and just like that, it's Skillous who obtains another point. You make one mistake, Skillous swoops in. He will take the cake and eat it too. Lovely game there, actually, by the Protoss player. He was ready to play a long match. Like, that was not necessarily him going for an all-in. He was just sort of fishing. It looks like, yeah, looks like GuMiho actually took the bait. Those European Protosses, man. They've been stepping it up. To be fair, there are a lot of them. But they have been stepping it up. Skillous has been around for a long time now. Actually, how old is Skillous? I want to have a look. Skillous has gotten very good after he moved to the Netherlands. I just want to, you know, point that out. He moved to the Netherlands a bunch of years ago. So he's from 2001. He's currently 21, or 23 rather, years old. Once more going into the Twilight Council build. Cyclone coming up. GuMiho once more. Wanting to be safe. Once upon a time, the Cyclone was just like your easy defense against most things Protoss early game. Now that you need to make a tech lab, not so straightforward anymore. Cyclone is going to pop. And eventually those adepts are going to get killed. Look at these SCVs, dude. Hungry for blood. Bloodthirsty space construction vehicles. Well, this one over here, it's got 1 health and 1 kill. You'll love to see it. How many gateways do we have? It's going to be a triple gate. Triple gate together with Blink. Robo facility as well, so he is going to be able to reinforce this if he wants to. GuMiho goes into the 3rd command center again. He's been a fan of the very fast 3rd command center. 3rd command center 211, so nice and early stim pack. Oh, nice control there. Although I think one of the Cyclones is going to go down. Maybe he can get the 2nd Stalker too. Yeah, he does. So that's 1 Cyclone for 2 Stalkers. Not the end of the world. Gets another lock-on done as well. Decides to chase all of this. Oh, lovely work there by the Gumi God. Very risky. Very dangerous. But he gets the job done. 3rd Nexus in the meantime, though, on the other side of the map. And this is when the real aggression for Skillous will begin. He's got a Prism now. He's got Blink. And he's got, well, triple gateway. With good control, this is actually the type of stuff that can just be extremely lethal. Now suddenly the Cyclone is not nearly going to have as easy a time, because all of the Stalkers are going to have Blink, and they're effectively going to have double Blink with the Prism too. There's only a single siege tank available at this point. 2nd one just popped out of the factory. Oh, if you can target that one down. SCV's actually awkwardly getting body blocked here too. Nice pickup micro, although that siege tank from the low ground joins in. Siege tank stays alive. And the Prism slips away. We had a few Stalkers as well inside of the natural. Trying to be a nuisance, but not really achieving enough. So far, so good here for GuMiho. He doesn't have a lot of Marines. He actually needs to be a little careful. Good Blink right there by Skillous. Gets one of the siege tanks for 1 Stalker. Bunch of Marines here were sleeping on the job at the bottom of the natural expansion. And now the natural mineral line is going to be in a little bit of trouble too. We did have 4 probes going down on the other side of the map. That must have been one of the Cyclones, I think. Wasn't quite paying attention to that. Keep in mind that every stim at this point is expensive. Every scan at this point is expensive too. Additional gates are going to finish up, and we do have charge. So no Robo Bay or anything along those lines. This is basically him going full gateway, man. A little bit... Okay. A little bit awkward there for a moment, but actually really nice pickup control. Keeps the Stalkers around. Warps it in the main base. Charge is now finished. Perfect timing on those units. Oh, GuMiho sees the legs. He sees the leg enhancements. We call that charge, Lowko. We call that charge in 2025. He sees the charge on the zealots, and he realizes that there's really no way for him to effectively fight it. So he decides to tap out, and that means that Skillous obtains the victory in this best of 5 series. 3-2-1.